Hello, testing. 1, 2. Hello, testing. Mic test.
All right, just to keep with the decorum of this whole event, I will use a microphone. So we're going to be starting off today's festivities. As you can tell the vibe, we have a group of very energetic young artisans who are waiting to perform to kick off this event. And I would like to introduce them by name. So first we have Putri Rafida binti Abdul Rahman, Angelica Alexander, Carmen Amelia, Nick Alak, Putri Alicia, Nur Zara Arena. So let's give them a warm welcome as they perform for us. Supergirls, Tiru Macam Saya.
Tell me when to start the music. Okay.
Give us the cue. There you have it, super girls, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Oh yeah, feel free to exit stage. I'm just trying to figure out the microphone here. So as you can tell, one of the reasons why we had this performance done by the younger generation is just to show the appreciation of the community towards P. Ramlee. In actual fact, this is part of a much bigger celebration. This is actually the Minggu Siniman Agung Tan Sri P. Ramlee. It's a 3-day community of, I guess you could say, Rugrats coming together. I'm a Rugrat. For example, we have Katam and their Mencari Ramlee team had done a 1-day exclusive photo shoot in Penang on Transfer Road on the 14th. Then there's the cast of Mencari Ramlee, Mugat, Sharizal, Sophia Jane, and Tony Yusof. They came last night to Gurney Plaza GSC to do a premiere. They did a premiere in KL and they did a premiere in Penang. So, wow, you know. Well, you could clap for that. But you could. So today, essentially, we're culminating with a deeper appreciation of P. Ramlee. You know, we invited speakers from Kuala Lumpur. We also have P. Ramlee critics, writers, lecturers from all over to give their insights. They had to. They also agreed to allow us to record on YouTube so we can share it to everybody who couldn't make it. And also a big shout out to My Penang Creative, who is putting together who had put together 3 consecutive back-to-back years of performing P. Ramlee 1 in a Million musical. For 3 years, Ilya Rosaidi had directed the show, and she did such a wonderful job in bringing to life his work. Her cast, as well as, I can see some of the cast here today. Thank you for coming from My Creative. Also, Supergirls, they have contributed their times and their enthusiasm for P. Ramlee. And also, they've helped us out with the refreshments. So there are refreshments. Thank you so much for that, too. And we are hosting this event just right next to P. Ramlee School. So that's right. So it is P. Ramlee's actual school. We were told when we were visiting Rumah P. Ramlee that P. Ramlee actually used the river from his house because his dad was working around the Kilang Besi area, and he actually went to school here. He actually took the river from his house all the way here. We can't envision it now because we have roads development that's covered the river. Thank you so much. But in essence, that's one of the reasons why today we decided to do Deconstructing P. Ramlee, because the question is, why hasn't there been any more P. Ramlees after? That's maybe because we need to study him. And we have 3 speakers, like I've mentioned. The first being Dr. Nazirul, the timelessness of P. Ramlee. There you go. I was trying very hard to remember that. So without further ado, I'll keep quiet and hand it over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Tom.
Welcome, man.
All right. Testing. That works. Hello. Hi, everyone. So I'm Nazirul. So today we're talking about that. And not to, tak nak kalah with the performance just now, I have a little bit of montage with music and clips. So let's start with that, yeah? Okay. All right. So, who recognizes that piece of music before we start? That's from a P. Ramlee film. You tak jadi dequalification. The experts are disqualified. That's actually from the opening credit of Ibu Mertuaku. You recognize that? So yeah, one of the underrated pieces of his work that we don't really realize that this is actually an original piece that we don't discuss about. So anyway, so today I'm talking about the timelessness of P. Ramlee. Let me start with the story. 2 years ago, on 29th of May 2023, anyone realize what date that was? 29th of May. What date is that? Oh, P. Ramlee fans here? That's the date of his passing, yes, correct. And on 2023 was the 50th anniversary of his passing. 50 years from 1973 to 2023. So BFM Radio invited me to just by Zoom to do some kind of interview, talk about him. They told me that around 5 o'clock, and they said, oh, so, okay, that's fine. They gave me some questions. So when am I on? Oh, around 6 o'clock. Wow, so I have 1 hour to prepare this. So, okay, fine. I can goreng something about P. Ramlee. But the story is that, so one of the things that they asked me was something that Mo asked. Why don't we have another P. Ramlee? After 50 years of his passing, we still don't have another one. So I thought, okay, maybe I can answer this. But then when they asked me that, I paused for about 10 seconds, I think. That felt the longest 10 seconds of my life. Like, oh, I don't have an answer to this. I don't know how to say this, how to answer this. I mean, maybe no one has an answer, right? But then I said something after that, but it felt like a very long pause. I didn't feel like I gave a good answer. So I think this is my 1 hour answer to that particular question. An attempt for that, at least. And so also this lecture is answering something that I think all of us is always asking. Why is it? P. Ramlee always, we watch it after 50 years, now it's 52 years now. We're still laughing, we're still crying. I just cried 2 days ago watching it on Mataku. So, you know, why is that? So that's the timelessness of that. And we still have kids enjoying his work. And it's not the same for the films of that era or songs of that era or even era after that. The 70s and 80s is not the same. So why is it so evergreen, as they call it? Why is it so enduring? That's what I'm trying to answer. Okay, so I'm answering that by a few ways. Okay, oops, sorry. Should have done that. Okay. Okay, sorry. All right. So I'm going to look at the data in the sense that I'm not looking at P. Ramlee's work itself. So I'm not interpreting the films or the songs in a technical way like what Pak Hassan and Kak Rahani can do. So I'm not a film academic. But what I'm trying to do is to understand how we perceive his work. Why do we feel that it's so timeless? And I'm looking at the people from his era. How do they perceive his work and him as a person? Why is that so enduring? And how we look at it. And I also looked at the people who, we as in the fans of P. Ramlee, we are familiar with his work. We watch it all the time, right? Just do it all the time. But also, how about people who has never seen his work? The youngsters. I'm from Monash University, so I'm like a minority there, in the sense that there's hardly any Malays there. So hardly anyone who actually knows P. Ramlee. Literally in the business school, I'm the only Malay guy for like 15 years now. So even the students are like that. So I found people, Malaysians, who have never watched any P. Ramlee movies and listened to any P. Ramlee song, like, wow, you are like a unicorn. I didn't think that there would be this kind of people in Malaysia. But they are. They know P. Ramlee from Jalan P. Ramlee and, you know, things like that. So I brought them in to watch a P. Ramlee movie and see how they react. So like a second debut in a sense. So to discover, you know, from fresh eyes, how they perceive. Okay. So I'm trying to answer that question. So that's how I'm answering it. Okay. All right. And so let's look at some data. I'm a data guy actually. So this is from YouTube. How many views of P. Ramlee movies? So the highest one is Tiga Abdul. 10 million views so far. And actually Tiga Abdul is by far, right? The second one is Alibaba. So that's 6 million and so on. And the highest song is Anak Dara Rindu, which is quite surprising to me. But you realize the pattern here. These are just the top 20 I took and clean up a little bit. Most, if not all, are comedies. Right? So that's the most enduring ones. I guess that makes sense. And P. Ramlee seem to agree with that. So there's the views, there's the likes and comments around the same. And a lot of comments. Tiga Abdul has 47,000 comments, 24,000 and so on. So there's a lot of, likes and comments, 2,000. Okay. And are these comedies so enduring? So Piramli said that. He said that even though Antara Dua Derajat, which is a very serious commentary on social class and so on, is you can send a message, but he believed that entertainment is the best way of pointing out a moral or a teaching, right? So, which is why he feels that those comedies can deliver that message better. Pendekar Macam Lapuk, what is it about? We always laugh about Mambang and Silat and all that, Pendekar Mustar and Baling Batu. It's very funny, right? It's all very funny, but what is the actual message? Education is more important. Right? Sebelum belajar silat, mesti belajar isim dulu. You have to know how to write. Go, sekolah buta huruf. Right? So, that's the message. But in a very comedic way. So, that's more effective. And true enough, it's enduring until now. The data says it, right? So, and on Spotify, the songs as well. Denang Perantau, of course, that's typical lagu raya, kan? So 6 million getaran jiwa and so on. 82,000 monthly listeners. That's quite a lot. And the Spotify playlist, this is Tan Sri Piramli, 16,000 followers. And these are just subscribers, right? Because Spotify is not free. But still, that tells you something. You know, after 52 years of his passing, he's still here. He's still with us. All right. So now, how can we describe this timelessness? There are many ways to define this, I think. One is that the film endure in the sense that we still watch it after many rewatches. We still enjoy it. That's one way of it being evergreen. One is that the message, the style, and so on endures even with new audiences, different generations, different era. Right? People who have never watched it say, "Oh, I enjoy this. This is fun. This is moving." That's another type of timelessness. And also the man himself. He's in a way never out of time. He's been gone for 52 years. He's been gone longer than he was alive. He died when he was 44, very young. But still, he's still with us. He's still relevant. He's still talked about, and he's still relevant. He still feels like, you know, here. We don't feel that he's so alien and so different. So yeah. So what I do here is, for the first part, is I look at some of the tributes and writings just after his passing by his peers and contemporaries, people who knew him best, like Abdullah Hussein, Sasawan Negara, so Cik Lah, he's one of his best friends, and some reporters and so on. So I look at patterns. What do they talk about? What are the themes that how do they describe him? What was he like? What was his work like? Right? Okay. So first, he was the charismatic everyman. He's not an elite. He's not, an expert filmmaker that's out of reach. He's one of us. He was one of them, and he's always charismatic and charming. So I asked Adlin Aman Ramli when he's here actually recording his podcast in Rumah Piramli. So he invited me when we were brainstorming about the biography of Piramli that he wanted to make, the biopic. So I asked him, what is the one character of Piramli that you think defines him? He said it's his naughtiness. So in a way that he's very cheeky and doing this and that, very entertaining. So that was his answer. What I thought about is that he's a very charming person. He's charismatic. People enjoy him. When he's not really a writer or a reader, but he likes to act out his screenplay. So they will have the desk. I wasn't there, but this is what I read. But when they have the desk read of the movie, right? So he will act out the whole thing. This is what the actors talk about. So that's how he explains the movie. So he's that kind of character. He's really one of them. Okay? And also, he's cheeky, so he's spontaneous. There's some madness in it. Saloma talked about a story where he was in the bathroom and stayed there for hours and hours doing this and that. It's like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I'm writing a song. Yeah, in the bathroom, scribbling on the walls and things like that. So he's that kind of person. And the way he does it is he talks to people and gets ideas and so on. So that's his creative process, which we only understand a little bit of. We hardly know anything about his creative process. And one way is because it's a bit of a madness kind of method. We don't really, it's not formalized, right? So he was never formally educated in filmmaking or writing or anything like that. But yeah, he was a master of that. And this is one of the thing that I thought about that's I think very important is hardly talked about is that L. Krishnan said, Ramli dia tiru cedok ciplak he's number one. Tapi orang tak tahu apa dia sudah buat. So he's a very good innovator in the sense that he brings in things from all elements, and I think that's one of that makes it the movies are universal because it has elements from all of us and it appeals to all of us. And if you look at the studio system at the time, there are people from all around this region. You know, his parents from Aceh, he's from Penang. There are people from Sulawesi. Normadia was a Filipino. There's people from Perak, Malacca, everywhere. So Singapore was a cosmopolitan, right? So there are ideas from all kinds of places. Otherwise, you won't get Niat Ngen Song Matakaji, that's Javanese, you know. All that from Sudan, these are all things that you wouldn't get if you would stick to your own silos. So this cultural fusion of ideas, I think, is one of the ingredients that made his work is so appealing to so many people and so enduring, right? Okay. And then he, you know, they say the best leaders are moral leaders. Not either in the best, you know, efficient or effective and so on, or, you know, standing tall and so on, but not the most competent, but the most moral. You do the right thing, you have the right values. Even now, in management, this is what they talk about. So he was that. And so his work, his films becomes our moral compass in a sense. It's always saying about the right thing, education, you know. And now, maybe it's quite obvious education is important, but at the time, it was not that obvious. People was not educated, can't read and so on. That's why sekolah buta huruf. It's all old people. Ini sekolah apa? Sekolah apa ni semua orang tua-tua? Sekolah budak-budak kecil. Right? So old people are still studying, so important. So at the time, that's the kind of values that he brings. And it endures because it was the right value, even though it may not be as common at the time. Right? Okay. And then, because of all this combination that he becomes immortal, he himself, his work and so on, because it's so relevant, it's always relevant and universal. You know, I think you're the same as me. You've heard of a lot of interviews and seminars about him from his contemporaries, especially people who knew him best, people who worked with him. And not one of them say anything bad about him, as far as I know. I've not heard anything bad about him. Even people who are supposed to be his adversaries or his enemies, people who was, you know, alleged to have been envious of him, but never speak anything bad about him. So he was that kind of person, and that's why he endures and is still relevant. Right? All right. Okay, so just to summarize the first part. So P. Ramlee is artist supreme, of course, Niman Agung, but he's also a cultural archetype. He was a beloved everyman, moral compass, and now he's a mythic figure as well, because we don't understand his process. It's like, oh, he's this legenda, right? Why is he a legenda? Because how did he do this? Why is this movie and this song so good? And why is this so relevant now? I listen to it, it feels like it's still new, it's not dated, right? So he's like that. And he did all this with laughter, with spontaneity, with fun, you know? And there's no formal structure as well. He was not formally educated. And he was an innovator as well. At the time, there was no film Melayu. It's all film Hindustan in Malay language. But with Semerah Padi, he brought that in. The first one. That basically spurred the whole Kete Kris genre of Sultan and Dang Anom and Tun Fatimah and all that started with Semerah Padi. And the comedies of Malays, you know, Pendekar Mustars. So it's the Malay themes, not just Malay themes, Malaysian theme, the Nusantara theme as well. Right? All these characters and stories. So he did that. And he is internalized by us because his story is so amazing that he was a pimply little extra, to quote one of them. And he becomes a national institution. It's not just a person, P. Ramlee, it's a whole institution of P. Ramlee. Right? So he represents that. He's also a vision of what a Malaysian art could be. Because at the time, we don't have that. We were not hardly a nation at the time. We were still under the British and the Japanese. But he created that for us. So he's, in a way, to quote my friend, he's the definition of the modern Malay, in a sense. compared to the older Malay during the Sultanate and all that, right? So that's what he was. This is what his contemporaries said about him. All right. So in my lecture, I usually stop to allow for questions. So any questions? Here we go. Any question or thoughts that you want to share?
Actually, what were the Malays
Yes.
like before P. Ramlee then? 'Cause for me, you're
Uh-huh.
right. P. Ramlee is like the archetype of every Malay man I know in KL.
Ah, right. Okay. So one of the things that I'm interested in also tanja, pakaian Melayu and all that. So I'm involved with this kind of people as well. So some of them feel that P. Ramlee is too modern. People who are cultural enthusiasts, they are purists, you know. They say, oh, this songket should be like this, batik should be like that. I mentioned it just now. So these are the purists, you know. They're really like Malay, you know. You want to go back to Melaka time and stuff, you know. That's the ideal for them in a sense, with a fusion of Islamic Madinah as well. So, for lack of a better definition. But for them, sometimes they say, oh, P. Ramlee smoked, P. Ramlee drank, P. Ramlee, you know, went for a dance and all. This is jahiliyyah, you know. So, not that we're saying that's not a good point. It's a good point to drink and all that. But even for them, P. Ramlee is modern, right? The songs, I mean, these songs are all, you know, these are not Islamic, you know, things like it's to entertainment. So there are people who are, before that, the definition of Malayness was different. Is still different. They still live like that now. There are people like that. So yeah, and it's, a lot of them are my friends. So I'm, in a way, you know, in between all this. So it's interesting to understand that. Does that answer your question? Yes.
Yeah, it does actually, straight up.
So yeah. Any other question? Okay. Yes.
You keep mentioning about P. Ramlee said as a moral compass.
Yes.
Every time you talk about, history, like
Mm.
your part and whatnot. Like, what kind of moral compass do you refer to?
That's a good point. I mean, at the time, the awareness of not drinking and wearing hijab was not as prevalent. It started, I think, in the 70s or 80s. Okay, I wasn't around at the time, but this is what I read and heard. But at the time, it was the norm at the time. But it's more than just practices like that when we talk about morality. We talk about how you treat other people and how you help people, how you give people opportunities. For example, people who owe him their whole career. Node Ahmad, Jin Samsudin, Sarimah, there's so many of them. Rose Yatimah. So these are people who were basically groomed by him to become the star that they are. And he's always so, I'll mention that later, that he's always so generous as well. He's never, giving money is one thing, but he's never the one to glorify himself. If you notice, in credit, in the Bujang Lapok, his name is the bottom one. Start with Aziz Osudin, and then Aziz Osudin, and then P. Ramlee at the end. So he's not the one that will be at the top. So he's never like that. And he is Teraju Utama, director, right? But he's actually involved in every single part of the movie. That's why you can feel that there's his touch there. Even some movies that his name was not on there, maybe his name is just a composer, but you can feel his touch. For example, Batu Belah Batu Petangkup, Jamil Sulong's debut movie was heavily influenced by P. Ramlee. The story, the song, don't say lah, all the songs are by P. Ramlee. But the story itself, and I never knew this. I was young, I was watching whatever movie, I didn't know who the director was or not. But then I discovered, it was a P. Ramlee movie. That's why it was so good. There's a P. Ramlee factor that we don't realize. Pancha Delima as well. I don't know what, the P. Ramlee was not there, right? I didn't know that it was a P. Ramlee movie. Years after, I was watching since I was 4, but I think I was like around 10 or 12. I realized, Pancha Delima is a P. Ramlee movie. So the touch is there somehow. So, and my point is that he never say, okay, I did this, so please put my name there. So the kind of morality as well. So yeah, besides just the appearance, is the act as well. So thank you for your question. Anything else? Yes.
Can I add on? I just came in, but
Sure.
you mentioned something about P. Ramlee not glorifying himself.
Mhm.
And that in itself, humility is the one test of Malayness that people often overlook.
Yeah.
He's very Malay in that sense,
Definitely.
I mean, you can't look at it wholesome, but if you look at the Malacca Sultanate era, the Malays were not, they were very, what's that word? They're not stagnant, you see. People keep on forgetting that because of the revolution we had in the 70s and 80s, we somehow forgot how the society was in the Malacca Sultanate era.
Yeah, yeah.
So we forgo that altogether, and coming back to that humility, that's very Piramli, and
Yeah,
we,
I agree.
we forgot that actually.
And it's very very Malay as well. One example, you mentioned Malacca, right? One thing is, if I may comment a little bit, I do a bit of research on this. We lost a lot of it. You know, not one keris have been found that's from Malacca era.
Of course.
Can you imagine? There's so many keris at the time, but it's all gone. I don't know if it's in Leiden or Lisbon or something, but we can't find anything from that era.
About what's lost
Yeah.
back then.
Correct. So, back to that humility, that there's one theme in Malayness. You know, padi, right? Resmi padi tundo, right? So anytime you find any pattern or motif on kain and fabric of padi, it has to always go down. It cannot point up. So that element of Malayness and morality has always been there since forever, basically. So yeah, very interesting. So they make him a moral Malayness there. Okay, thank you. So it's nice to have a
Another
conversation.
question, or do you want to proceed? Because I think we're all very interested. You want to ask a
Yeah,
question?
there's more. I have like 72 slides. Okay, let's move on. We can have more questions later. All right. So then, I think you know about the History Channel documentary, right? By Shami Baba, 2009, I think. A lot of people cried after watching it. I cried as well. And I want to see what was the reaction. So this is how we perceive him and his life. So I look at the YouTube comments on that particular documentary. There's like a few thousands of them. And I try to understand the pattern. So this is how we see him. There's a collective grief. So Piramli is a central legend in a sense. You know, the mythic creative that we talked about just now. And then because of that, we look at, we are grieving the loss of Piramli, and we look at, oh, what have we done wrong towards him? And then the self-critic as well. Ya, ni lah orang Melayu memang macam ni. So things like that, you know. So I look at all those kind of comments, and these are the kind of things. So first of all, Piramli is a timeless, unmatched legend. There's still a consensus saying that no one has ever done the same song and the same movies as him. Not the same effect and meaning, right? Evergreen and so on. And then grief, anger, and outreach of how he was treated. To set the record a little bit straight, the story there is not 100% correct. It's a bit exaggerated. So yeah, he was down, he was not at his peak, but he was not a pauper. Correct? So my friends have done research on this, and there are a lot of evidence. I've spoken to people who knew him at the time as well. He has a lot of money, he has cars, he has houses and so on. So he was not like super poor. He was down, he was broken, heartbroken and all. That's all true. But he was not living in poverty. Yeah? Okay, so just a little bit of a fact there. Right? But yes, even then, the fact that he didn't have a new contract and so on is still heartbreaking. And we are angry about that, obviously. And then because of that, we are looking at ourselves. See, we know some people or some parties that Piramli is old news and all that. I have a first-hand story about this. Datuk Lat. I'll tell the story. He just told me the story a few days as well. Just met him 2 days ago at his house.
Semalam lah.
Semalam. Oh yes, semalam. Feels like a very long 2 days. There's so many things. Semalam. Sorry. Yes, yesterday on the way from KL, we stopped by Ipoh and we met him, Datuk Lat. You all know him, another national treasure. So when he was 19, he started as a crime reporter. He's a big fan of Piramli. So he told his editor, I want to interview Piramli lah. Kata, kau apa nak interview Piramli? Piramli is a has-been, he's a nobody. This was 1971 or 72. Because that time Piramli was really, not at his peak. Really as one of his lowest time. And then, but he went anyway. He went there, spoke to Piramli for 1 hour. Piramli didn't even think that someone is meeting him. He thought, oh, cari Nasir ke? Nasir was his son, thinking that Lat was one of the band members of his sons. So yeah, but spoke to Lat for 1 hour, talk about this and that. But the point is that the people at the time saying that, why are you talking to Piramli? He's a nobody now. So that part is definitely true. And the fact that we now realize that it breaks my heart every time to know that. Every time, sometimes I go to his grave in Jalan Ampang. I talk to him, I said, Abang Ramli, people all appreciate you now. You know, he never felt the Tan Sri and all this thing that he felt really forgotten. That his last final song was Air Mata di Kuala Lumpur, Hancur Musnah Impian Mulia. So all his dreams were crushed. So yeah, wish he would be able to know how we feel about him now. You know, how much we appreciate him. So yeah, of course, people, you know, recite Fatiha, say Fatiha there in the YouTube and so on, say, oh, no, maybe this is to cleanse him so that he can be pure before he, you know, meet his maker, so that he's pure now, he's redeemed, you know. Maybe that's people are praying for him basically, right? And then we keep looking back, you know, things about the issues of royalties, all that at the time, because P. Ramlee was paid by the studio. He's an employer, so he didn't have royalties and all that. He didn't even know that those kind of things were possible. I had a symposium on this I did 2 years ago for the 50th. I brought someone from a copyright expert saying that, oh, it's 50 years now, some of the copyrights are over, right? It's finished, so that can we, you know, do stuff with his movies? Can Shaw still claim this? Apparently, yes, can. So it depends. It's very complicated because Singapore and then British time and, you know, Malaysian law, Singapore laws is very, very complicated. But in short, some yes, some no. Yeah. So there's a whole thing about that. But at the time, so if he could have managed that better, then he could have, you know, have it better. His estate. Imagine the kind of estate that he would have now. Now we are literally begging the government, please preserve his house, preserve his this and that. You know. Yeah. I'll tell you some stories later. I have some pictures and stories I'm going to tell you. Okay, right. So that's how us modern audience perceive him as the man P. Ramlee and also his work. And yeah, indeed, I think the conclusion is that he will live, as he said, allegedly, that he will live for another 1,000 years. So, yeah. So that's the second part of my presentation. Any question about that?
Yeah, how
Yes,
do you get to that level where every facet of the Malay demographic idolize him? You know, like say for example, if you have a normal celebrity, you have the modern crowd that love him,
Right.
and then you have the conservative, you know, and then you have a Nashi group, which is the opposite, loved by the religious,
Right.
But the modern one hates them.
You mentioned Nasheed, interesting. You know, what is the first Nasheed? Rukun Islam, a P. Ramlee song.
Oh, is that where it came from?
That's the first Nasheed. Practically. It wasn't defined as Nasheed at the time. Rukun Islam lima perkara. And that music, thanks to Kak Rahani, is from Hang Tuah. Negeri Melaka, Negeri Melaka, Negeri Mulia. That. So that's the music, and he changed the lyric to Rukun Islam. So that's basically the first Nasheed, which was, what year was that? Hang Tuah was 1955, the music. So that song, I think, lyric in the 60s. So yeah. Anyway, so to answer your question, I had a friend who said, you know, knowing that I am a big fan of P. Ramlee has no genre. What genre is P. Ramlee? Is it comedy only? No. Is it rom-com only? No. It's not. Well, how about the music? Is it ballad? Not really. He has other songs. Is it marching band song? Yes, he has that too. Is it a Bohemian Rhapsody kind of song? Yes, he has that too. Aneka Ragam. He had that. So that's why he appeals so much. Aneka Ragam. It's not in any film, so you can find the song. It's on Spotify, I think. So, and the fact that he's so good and he's so prolific as well. He touched every single genre. So there's always something that you can find that you can like about him. I think that could be one answer why he appeals to everybody. And he never want to. Oh, okay. Of course, he likes Lagu Asli. He wants to promote keroncong and all. He does all this kind of keroncong and music, right? But he also realized that people like different kind of songs. He appeals to this. To send a message, to appeal, you have to appeal to the masses as well. So he talks about all of that. So he's not a selfless short sendiri advocating just for what he wants and just for one type of music or film. So I think that's why he still appeals to everyone. So yeah.
Any questions from the crowd?
Yeah, any questions?
I want to steal all the questions.
Yeah? Okay. Can I ask later? No problem. Still have time? No. Okay, this is the last part. So, like I mentioned just now, I found this group of people who has never watched any Piramli movies. I said, what's wrong with you? So, I forced them to watch Ibu Mertua Aku. And I know them quite well. They were in the early 20s at the time. Mix of people, mostly Malaysians, Malays, Chinese, Chindians, Malay Chindian, Machindian, like, you know, they're all three mixed. Indonesian, Singaporean, Indians. So yeah, a lot of mix. So I want to test how would they perceive a Piramli movie. And I chose Ibu Mertua Aku because I think it embodies his whole work, because he was given the award of Most Versatile Talent for Ibu Mertua Aku. And there's comedy in it. There's romantic comedy, there's tragedy, and you know, timeless songs, and Piranha really cares about this one. He took basically a pay cut just so he can finish this movie. That's why he quickly made Labu Labi and Nasib Labu Labi in that same year, because that's his contract with the studio. Correct me if I'm wrong. So he had to do that to fulfill that, because this took so long. So Piramli cared about this one, so I think it's a good candidate. So I also tried with Pereka Bujalapok, but I'm not prepared for that one. But yeah, so let's look at how do they perceive this. Right, so this is the themes that I find from their the focus group that we did. Okay, I'm gonna go through each one of them. Right, and the first one is just a bit of comment of how a film critic, Amir Muhammad, wrote in his book here. He said, Ibu Mertua Aku is a contemporary movie whose story has become something like a modern myth. It affirms the vital importance of being able to truly see without prejudice. This is the very underlying message. How, you know, it's about blindness, right? But can you see, really? Like Sabaria falls in love with Kasim Slamat. Those times no TV, all radio. Just from not seeing him, just from listening to him, fell in love. And then the first date, also because they don't know how each other look like, so they send a substitute, their friend and the mate, to see, because they're not sure how they look. So do they really see each other? Because they're scared that either of them will be ugly. And then he's blinded by Sabaria's beauty to not notice how shallow she actually is. And it's proven throughout the movie that she's happy with Dr. Ismadi. Right? She likes that kind of lifestyle. Alright. And actually when was the ending, right? When he's blind, you know, Chombi is happier with him, and he's happy as well to not see anyone, just happy with Chombi, you know. Chombi is bila Chombi jumpa Abang Gasin dulu, Abang Gasin keadaan buta, sekarang pun Abang Gasin buta tapi Chombi bahagia. So you know, it doesn't matter. You can see another person without vision, without sight. So yeah, it's about honesty, right? So timeless emotional impact. So this is quite interesting that they say the emotional impact is still there. It's still emotional, the story and all that. Some say it's a little bit exaggerated, but they can still feel the sadness and all that. Yeah, they can. So betrayal of loss and love and injustice and cruelty is still relevant. It still resonates with them. Okay, so that's one. Sorry. Okay, I made a bit of a mistake. So there are two parts of this. So this first part are the comments from YouTube. Okay, so these are the people who, not the group, that group is second part. So the first part here is YouTube comments. So people who are more familiar, not the first time viewers. Sorry, okay. These are not the first time viewers, the second part. So this part are the people who are like us, who are watching on YouTube. This is what they talk about. It resonates with them, emotion and so on. And these are some of the comments that they mentioned, right? 20 kali tengok pun 20 kali menangis. So I've lost count how many times I've watched this. But yeah, so, right. And then, cross-generational. So they mentioned about, in 2023, I'm still watching this. You know, it's still from, I was young until now, I'm still watching. I'm watching it with my mom, watching it with my dad. There's still that generational enjoyment of it, right? Still there. It's not that's nostalgic. Nostalgia is when, you know, when we watched it when we were young and then we enjoy it now. So that's nostalgic, right? Oh, I like the older days. But even new audiences. So my mom watches this, I watch it also. This is, I still feel that this is emotional. It's interesting. Right, so that becomes, in a larger theme, becomes a cultural continuity. That's why Piramli is an institution, not just entertainment. Right. And then moral reflection. There's a lot of discussion about Sabaria is the wrong one. Obviously, the Ibu Metua herself is the obvious villain, the antagonist. But Sabaria is also actually I want to live this rich and luxurious life. I don't want to be poor. You can't work. You must do some manual labor so that we can get back to my mom and so on, things like that. And if you notice, when they ran to Penang, actually, from Singapore, right? Where did they stay? Hotel. They have no job, right? Stay at a hotel, so live the luxurious life. And there's this scene here. Oops, sorry. This is a deleted scene. Have you seen this? So there's actually a scene, Ibu Mentua of horse racing. Yeah, by Sabaria and Kasim Selamat. So they were, going jolly and all that. Gambling the money off, the money away. So when I showed this to my film studies colleague, and he said, wow, this changed my whole analysis of this movie, so I have to retract my article. Because he never seen this. So you see, there's a different judgment there. They were not smart as well. They were gambling away their money, right? So there's that kind of dynamic as well, which is, I think, quite interesting. So we should preserve this kind of scene. Don't just take it away. It's important to the whole message. I got that. Okay. Right. And then, of course, it embodies Piramli as a national legend, the ideals of wisdom, sacrifice, and artistic purity, and so on. And to the point that he becomes like a cultural prophet, in a sense, He's the one that we turn to understand our values and so on. Right? So this is how they commented on this. All right. Of course, the socioeconomic commentaries, Saparia Kasim Selamat, lawyer, magistrate. So it's so important. So what do you do? Who are you marrying? Ahli music or pantang ahli music? I'm a rich Nyonya Mansur. I cannot have, musicians. At the time, celebrities, artists, actors were not admired. And you see, Savari, after marrying Dr. Ismail, you see they live like the British in a sense, the style, having afternoon tea and so on. So that's the kind of lifestyle that she wanted, that she is familiar with. Yeah, so it shows that kind of difference in the social class, right? Compared to how they used to live at bawah kolong, right? Because they have no money anymore. Yeah. So, and interestingly as well, that as generations progress, different generations, they see it differently. So there's a maturing public discourse in a sense. Some say that, I used to think that Yamanso was the villain, but actually, she's just thinking about her daughter. You should marry someone who can take care of you, because you can't survive otherwise. Things like that. So there's a lot of discussion on that as well. So that's quite interesting. There's a changing of view. So it's not just straightforward, it's not just clear cut. And I think Piramli realized this when he made this. That's why there's the horse race gambling scene showing that it's not just black and white. Right? There is blame on Sabaria and on Kasim Selamat as well. They were not so smart in managing, and it's not just the mother-in-law's fault. So, and we are seeing that. That's quite interesting. Right. And of course, admiration for his talent, that he can do everything. Of course, he did not play saxophone. That was played by Yusuf B, the best saxophonist ever. But how long did it take you before you knew about that fact, that he was not the one playing the saxophone? It took me quite a while. To me, I think I was in my teen years before I realized that he was not the one playing it. But the funny thing is, it's in the credits. It says solo tenor saxophone Yusuf B, but we didn't realize that. So Pirelli never, tried to hide that fact. Yusuf B was one of his collaborator and teacher, so he never hid that saying, I played this. No, he didn't. But he was so good at it, we thought he was the one playing it. All right. Okay. Now, this is the second part that I explained. I found these people who never watched Piramli. I forced them to watch this. So how did they perceive this? So, okay, the first timers. So this was a poster I did. So I identified 61 plot points, and as I consider myself quite well versed in the movie, I understand what certain plots should make you feel and so on, the reaction that's expected. Then I see if this audience get that message. Do they laugh? Do they cry? Are they shocked? So I see the reaction. Is it as intended? I think the filmmaker Piramli intended, or no reaction, indifference, or the opposite reaction. So I mapped that out. And so half of it was as intended, so that's good. About 30% was the opposite. So it's supposed to be sad, they were laughing instead. You know? So something's wrong with that. You know? Maybe like there's the way Chombi was crying and things like that. Oh, this is like a very exaggerated, so comical. You know? Something like that. You know? Or nothing, indifference. You know, no reaction to any of those. See, for whatever reason. So I asked them, so why do you feel this way and so on? So this is what they said. This is the kind of theme that I found. So what factors create that resonance? The film itself, the individuality, the sense that their background. I've noticed that if there's one Indonesian who's more culturally Malay in a sense, she understood it more. She got it more. The people who are a bit more, you know, Americanized, a bit more Anglophile, so not as much. So if you understand the Malay nuances, then the Malaysian nuances, then you understand that better, the message. So that's quite interesting. And the era, so I talk about, it's black and white, the technology is not so good, and things like that. It's a bit choppy. I mean, it's the product of the time, right? The technology, you can't do anything about that. So this is what they say. So from comedic drift of tragedy, so they see this, oh, that's so funny, the face, right? But we say that to the, ala kasih, we make fun of it too, right? So there's that kind of reaction to that, especially to Nyonya Mansur. And then the blind scene as well, which really, you know, touches me when I watch this. I want to share this, talk about individuality, right? My personal. Sarima is from my mom's kampung in Pekan. My mom is from Pekan, Kampung Marhum. She's from Kampung Pulau Rosa, if I'm mistaken, which is just the next kampung. So her accent is like my mom's accent. So there's one line there, say, Abang Kasim, kesianlah ke mak. I heard that, oh, it sounds like my mom. And it really, you know, it goes straight to my heart. It sounds like my mom is saying this. So it touches me more because of that. So I think those kind of factors really affect the viewers as well. So yeah, that's every time I say, oh, this sounds like my mom. You know. So yeah, so that's one. And then, but also about cultural mirror and stereotyping. They say that, oh, you know, this is the hierarchy at the time. Women don't work, they marry off to a doctor or a lawyer, a magistrate and so on. And the woman is dependent and weak and has no decision and so on. Like, you have to follow the man. Like Chombi as well. Oh, I've lost my husband. I'm broken now. Oh, now I have Abang Kasim. Now I'm alive again. So you know, things like that. So they say, oh, they're always dependent on the man. So that's what the viewer perceive. Interestingly, though, at the time, Piramli actually commented on this, saying that the mother actually told Sabaria, kau pilih. You choose. You want Dr. Ismadi or Qasim Selamat? So there was actually a decision being, you know, autonomy being given to Sabaria. If you choose Ismadi, you get everything. If you choose Qasim Selamat, you're not my family. So actually there was an element of that. So it's not all stereotype. But I guess the viewer didn't realize that. But Piramli commented on it. So the message was there even at the time. It was in the movie itself. And that we may have just missed, you know, which is not common at the time to have that kind of autonomy. Okay, right. Of course, the status boundary of the class difference and so on. And interestingly, of course, like I mentioned, Sabaria still wants that kind of lifestyle. When with Qasim Selamat, go for parties, stay at a hotel, and much happier with Ismadi. With Qasim Selamat is just Abang Qasim, but with Ismadi, Kanda. You know, the way they interact is different. I love you is in English, so things like that. So there's always a class difference there that's very obvious in this movie. All right. And yeah, this is the dependent woman trope that they notice as well. Okay. Right. And the fact that they fall in love so easily. Like Chombi realizes, oh, that's Kasim Slamat, I love you now. Abang Kasim. That's after the saxophone, right? And then Sabaria as well, never met this guy just from the music, the songs. Oh, I've been in love with you since forever. So this is a bit of a too easy to falling in love. That's what they see. And they also like that. Basically, it's a time capsule, seeing that how it was at the time. The lifestyle, the jazz culture, that was the biggest thing that they mentioned. There's an Indonesian saying that, oh, I didn't know Malaysia had a jazz culture. Because now you don't see this anymore. Hardly. Well, we have a Penang Jazz Festival. But not anymore, sadly. Kesian Paul. But yeah, the people didn't know that we had this kind of scene. Yeah. So because of this kind of films, they get to see this culture and so on. So another reason why it's so important to preserve all this. Okay. All right. So, and you also talk about, why didn't Kasim Sama just go to Singapore and check on the wife and the child? Well, he was poor, so maybe he couldn't do that. But why didn't Sabaria came to Penang and check on Kasim Sama? Just trust his mother, her mother. Kasim Sama, jangan-jangan kau memang krebet Sabaria. So, and just got a divorce from that. Annulment. Sorry? Suruh apa surat? Oh, takkanlah mana buang sesuatu kau tu nak. But yeah, that's exactly what she did. She definitely threw away all those letters, right? So yeah. But there's a lot of those kind of logical gaps that they noticed that they could have done better. Of course, this kind of comments always for every movie. All right. Okay. Right. And it's melodramatic. The song comes on. There's an influence of Hindustani style as well, so on, right? Okay, so I'm not gonna do too much about that. All right, and the archetype of mother-in-law. This is a comment on the acting of Mak Dara. She's so effective, and of course we know this. She's so iconic in this character. She's probably the only character that we know of her. Every time you see her in anything, you see Nyonya Manso. Like this, she's the same character. And Piramli is so good at this. Piramli's casting is so good. Haji Bakil, Pendekar Mustar, Director Ahmad Nisfu, you don't see them as any other character. This is them. So he's so good at that. So even Hang Tuah, Piramli, he didn't cast himself, but he's so good at that. We think Hang Tuah, we think of Piramli. That's the Hang Tuah that we have in our minds. I'm not saying for you, you're younger, I think. But yeah, this is quite interesting. So yeah, so that's a comment on that. And that as an agent of social control, a very matriarchal kind of society as well, embodied by this character. So how do they differ? So I think the main difference is that the first time viewers, they're more critical in a sense. They can see it a bit more objectively. So they're not used to it. So they don't really understand the style and so on. Not that it's a bad thing, but they can see it as what it is. But despite that, so they can see the plot holes and so on. But despite that, they still enjoyed it. And they definitely, all of them say that they would watch another Piramli movie. Yeah, they definitely all said that, despite whatever plot holes and so on, flaws that they see. So yeah, this is interesting. And they watched the whole thing. None of them fell asleep. I know, I was there, I was watching them. So yeah, so that's interesting. All right. Okay, so that's all about the films and timelessness. Next part, we'll be going through some songs and some stories about his artifacts and so on. So I'll stop here for now. Any to take questions? Can I still go? Another? Okay. Any question?
Oh yeah. Well, we reached the end, but you feel free to wrap it up however you like.
Okay.
Not so much question lah, tapi input lah. You
Yeah.
shouldn't watch Ibu Mertuaku with your mother-in-law lah.
Pro tip. Should not watch it.
Komen tu kena tahu lah.
Oh.
She's a godsend. Right? Yeah.
Okay. Can I share just 2 stories? Can I? So, his songs has so many versions. There are actually 5 versions of Tunggu Sekejap. You know that? Yeah. All of his songs at least has 2 versions. The film version and the one on Spotify. Which I think the film version is far superior. Even the voice is different, the pitch and everything is different. So there are 5 different types of Tunggu Sekejap. That's the original one, of course. And that's the Salma version, the female version in the movie itself. And there's the marching version from the beginning of Saja Hassan. And there's also the beginning of Bujang Lapo, trumpet. That's also Tunggu Sekejap. And there's a Saloma version as well, which many of you may not have heard. I've not heard. I just heard like a few years ago. I just discovered it. So mind-blowing. Okay, and so that's one. I'll skip some. So these are the other ones, different